It's time for Weekly Pulse, your heartbeat to what's trending in sports. Welcome to Weekly Pulse. I'm your host, Mackenzie Salmon. The Lakers are officially your 2020 NBA champions, and we dive into what this championship means for LeBron and the Lakers. Switching over to the gridiron, Saints safety Malcolm Jenkins chats with me about his work for social justice off the field, while our very own Jory Epstein details the Cowboys' reaction to losing Dak Prescott for the rest of the season and connects with Oklahoma head coach Lincoln Riley. I also take a look at the biggest findings from this year's college coaches football compensation database. But before we get to all that, let's see how every NFL team landed in this week's power rankings and get Lorenzo's locks for the week. Can we have Tuesday Night Football every week? Asking for a friend. Week 5 is in the books a day later, and it's time for risers and fallers in this week's power rankings. Riser, Tennessee Titans. After going through a COVID-19 outbreak off the field, the Titans reminded everyone they're still legit on the field. This team was in the AFC Championship game last year, and after beating the 4-0 Bills, there's no reason to think they can't get back there. Faller, Buffalo Bills. After a perfect first quarter, Tuesday night's loss to the Titans is a slice of humble pie for the Bills. They'll have to regroup quickly with games against the Chiefs and the Patriots coming up in the next few weeks. Faller, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It feels like a century ago, but this team did lose to an underwhelming Bears team last Thursday night. They have a rash of injuries and a quarterback who can't count to 4. All jokes aside, this has some ways to go to be considered amongst the elites in the NFC. Riser. How about the Miami Dolphins? They throttled the defending NFC champs in their own home. Miami very well could have one of the best 1-2 punches at receiver with Devontae Parker and Presto Williams. Faller. Indianapolis Colts. Phillip Rivers did not look good against an average Browns defense, and it's becoming clear this team cannot compete if Rivers turns over the ball the way he did this week. Riser, Las Vegas Raiders. They beat the defending champs and they look good doing so. Derek Carr outplayed Patrick Mahomes. Let that sink in. There is no understating this Raiders performance. This was the biggest win in over a decade for this franchise.
Yes, sir. I told y'all that 3-0 was coming, but more importantly, I haven't dropped one in 2 weeks and I'm hitting at 78.5%. Let's just say I'm feeling like Derrick Henry and my haters are, well, you get it. I'm Lorenzo Reyes and I've covered the NFL for nearly a decade. And every week this season, I'm gonna hit you with the 3 bets I feel most confident in, my locks of the week. And let's get going with a line that I just absolutely love. I mean, I love this one. I'm going to ride this Packers team until they give me reason not to. They're on the road in Tampa giving 2. Like, for real, what am I missing here? Green Bay is 4-0 against the spread this season, and they're coming off a bye. Aaron Rodgers is in the MVP race, and he's 8-2-1 against the spread as a starter when given an extra week to prepare. Jump on this before it moves because I bet it will. This is my take it to the bank lock of the week, Packers 31-24. Let's dip into another matchup I love. The Chiefs are on the road giving 3.5 to the Bills. I get it. Las Vegas and even the Chargers in week 2 exposed some flaws in KC's offense. The key is to get pressure without blitzing and dropping defenders into coverage. The Bills just can't do that. And I don't see Kansas City dropping 2 in a row. Grab the Chiefs to cover those points. I've got them 34-25. Finally, not sure if you're sensing a theme this week, but I'm just crushing on road favorites. The Rams look like a solid team, and that pass rush is just fierce. Enter a 49ers team that just got drubbed by the Dolphins and is still loaded with injuries all over the place. The Rams are giving 3.5 in a short road trip that's more than manageable. Sean McVay is 11-6-1 against the spread against NFC West opponents, and if Aaron Donald can get that pressure up the middle, it's going to be a wrap. Take LA to win and cover 27-21.
CeeDee Lamb said he instantly looked away when he saw Dak Prescott's ankle. The compound fracture and dislocation were gruesome. CeeDee, with all due respect, couldn't stomach them. But as soon as CeeDee had showered after the Cowboys' 37-34 win over the New York Giants, he reached out to Dak. He told Dak thanks for all he had done for the rookie, and that the Cowboys would hold it down until their quarterback was back out there. The outpouring of love, support, and concern were unanimous when Dak went down. He immediately needed to be transported to the hospital, and Cowboys and Giants alike were devastated. Giants offensive coordinator Jason Garrett went over to Mike McCarthy, his successor, and placed a hand on his back. I texted Garrett after the game to see what he was thinking, and Garrett said he, quote, feels really sad for Dak, but he has no doubt that Dak will face this challenge head on. Garrett said Dak's, quote, a true inspiration to so many, and I put myself at the top of that list. I love him to death and wish him a full and speedy recovery. Cowboys owner Jerry Jones echoed that sentiment for the quarterback who's playing on the final year of his deal. Jerry said that he has no doubt Dak will return to the position of leadership and purpose he holds with the Cowboys.
This year has been unlike any other in recent history. COVID-19 has wreaked havoc not only from a health standpoint, but an economic one as well. So how has this impacted college football coaches? Well, since 2006, USA Today Sports has compiled and analyzed the salaries of head coaches in the FBS as part of its annual review of coaches' compensation. And here are 5 revelations we found from this year's database. First things first, the top-end college football coaches are still getting paid very well. The result of the review found that 4 coaches are making more than $8 million, led by Alabama's Nick Saban at $9.3 million, while 30 coaches are making at least $4 million. Among the Power 5 schools, we were able to determine the average is nearly $4.4 million. Some programs, though, have opted for creative pay cuts in an effort to save money. For example, some schools opted out of giving their coaches monthly allowances for cell phone use, leases on a car, and even cut bonuses altogether. Texas is taking it further, reducing Tom Herman's salary, but then promising to pay him back later, aka an IOU. Other schools, including Iowa and Indiana in the Big Ten, took a different approach. Coaches can keep their salaries, but will instead donate to the university the amount that would have been cut. While some programs utilize the creative ways to save money, others saw head coaches step up and flat out take pay reductions. So who gave back the most? Clemson's Dabo Swinney. While Swinney is still one of college football's highest paid coaches, according to an agreement obtained by USA Today Sports, Swinney agreed in August to forfeit the $1 million retention bonus he would have otherwise received in January, while also postponing the $250,000 raise that his contract calls for starting at the beginning of the year. Other coaches who've given back in big ways include Florida State's Mike Norvell and Oklahoma's Lincoln Riley. On the flip side, some programs were seemingly well enough positioned to avoid pay cuts or reductions at all levels of staffing, at least for now. 2 notable coaches who haven't taken any pay cuts include Alabama's Nick Saban and LSU's Ed Orgeron. When Weekly Pulse returns, I break down what this championship means for LeBron and the Lakers. And our NBA reporter Mark Medina taps into the age-old question, who's better, Michael Jordan or LeBron James? Stay tuned. Welcome back to Weekly Pulse. The Lakers and LeBron are back on top. LA gets their 17th, LeBron gets his 4th. Both should look at the championship for what it is, arguably their most impressive feat yet. The 2020 Lakers championship will be documented for years to come, one that included tragedy, a pandemic, and resiliency. The more you dive into this team's journey, the more impressive and surreal it becomes. At the conclusion of the 2018 NBA season, LeBron and Cleveland appeared to be out of gas. The Lakers were coming off their 6th consecutive losing season, the worst stretch of losing in LA's franchise history. LeBron needed a fresh start, the Lakers needed a reboot. And in July of 2018, an often speculated marriage became reality.
We don't know, it's the unknown. The unknown is, what to expect at the end of the road. So I don't ever base anything off of that. What I know I can bring to the table is, being committed to, having excellence, every single day.
While instant gratification was expected, James meshing with a young Lakers roster was anything but a guarantee. In fact, it was a downright disaster the first year. Rumors swirl that LA was desperate to find another superstar to join James. Then, by chance, a few ping pong balls changed everything. Suddenly, a trade for a disgruntled Pelicans superstar Anthony Davis was possible. New Orleans sent Davis to La La Land in exchange for a king's ransom. And in the blink of an eye, the Lakers went from lost to legit. Then tragedy struck. Kobe was gone, the Lakers, LeBron, LA, and the world grieved.
We've become a family in a very short time. And it's something that you talk about in the NBA with your teams. But this group in particular has really grown to love each other very rapidly. And this has just brought us closer together.
Just as the league was getting prepared for the final stretch of the regular season, a pandemic struck, shutting down the entire sports world within days. Suddenly, there was no guarantee this Lakers team was going to finish what they started. Then, a bubble was created and the season was back on with 22 teams. Whoever came out on top would need the talent, the chemistry, the mental fortitude, and focus that no other NBA championship has ever required. For nearly 4 months, the Lakers ran the gauntlet and left no doubt they were the best team in 2020. All the while being a steady voice for social justice when the country needed to hear it the most.
Like we want change. As a community, we really want change. And it doesn't not only just end in November, but it starts there.
Given all the external hardship, the 2020 Los Angeles Lakers championship is the most impressive title for this historic franchise and one that solidifies LeBron James' status as an all-time great with Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant.
Frankly, I like Michael Jordan's game better, but I think I'm going to get on a soapbox here. We got to get off these comparisons and really appreciate each player for what they've done individually. You know, Michael Jordan's won 6 championships out of 6 finals appearances. LeBron James has won 4 championships out of 10 finals appearances. And look, there's a case to be made that each player has excelled in different ways. Michael Jordan was the better scorer. He was the more maniacal competitor, but LeBron James figured out much earlier in his career how to elevate his teammates, how to make the right basketball play. Entirely different set of circumstances. LeBron James is playing the social media era where there's a lot more scrutiny. He was part of the era that he started with having more fluid player movement, and for better, you can form alliances quicker, but for the worse, there's less room to be able to foster team chemistry and have continuity. And so I think it really gets in this apples and oranges comparison, and it's become an unhealthy part of our sports debate culture that every single thing that LeBron James does is always then put into light of how does this match up with Jordan, instead of just simply appreciating what LeBron James did. And in this season, it was a lot. And so I think that's where the conversation should be more, appreciating what each player has done as opposed to just delegitimizing one player over the other with the constant comparison game.
Coming up after the break, I caught up with Saints safety Malcolm Jenkins to talk COVID protocols throughout the league, as well as his work as an executive producer. We'll be right back. We're back on Weekly Pulse. So obviously it was a huge come from behind win for you guys on Monday Night Football. And after everything you guys went through this week, how big of a win was it for you and the team?
I mean, it was huge. You know, we obviously didn't start that game the way we wanted to, but did what we needed to do, you know, as a team to win that game in the fashion that we did. So it's huge for us to go into this bye, you know, in first place with 3-2. Instead of being 2-3, that's not where we want it to be. So still a lot of work to be done, but obviously we're measured in this league by wins and losses, and we did what we needed to do.
And you guys had a COVID scare with one of your players this week, and it thankfully turned out to be a false positive. And we saw the Titans and the Patriots deal with their own outbreaks, and it seems like the NFL moved mountains to get those games in. And I know Jason McCourty said that he thought that the league was prioritizing getting in games over players' safety. I wanted to know how you feel like the league is handling COVID right now.
Well, I think, you know, in proper context, we're trying to play football in the pandemic, which those two things just don't match up well. So I think every player going into it, you know, kind of understood the risk that somebody's going to get COVID. And there's probably going to be some sort of spread here or there. It's just the question is how, you know, do we have every protocol in place that we can to mitigate the risk? And I think, you know, we have, but as the facts and the situations change with COVID, so will the protocols. And I think there are some things that need to be updated. You know, we're all kind of learning. It's not like we have a manual on how to play football during the pandemic, but I think the NFLPA and our leadership council has done a great job of fighting for as safe a workplace as possible, but also, you know, knowing that guys want to play ball. And so, you know, some of the things are unfortunate, but I think we'll continue to learn and continue to do what we can. But obviously, we understand that the league want to make their money, and they're going to do whatever they can to put games on. You know, it's up to us to just protect ourselves.
Now describe your collaboration with Old Spice. I've heard they have a 10-year initiative to help positively impact high school graduation rates. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm partnering with Old Spice to raise the graduation rates in young boys across the country, but also really create dialogue around Black boys and how they interact with our education system, because they have a unique experience, and be able to talk about just who they are and how do we make Black boys comfortable in their own skin. And the way we're doing that is we've been screening with young kids a film called Black Boys that I executive produced that really dives into the humanity of Black boys and men, and how as early as grade school the humanity is under attack. And so we want to be able to create spaces where Black boys can see themselves outside of just being an athlete or an entertainer, of what they can do with their body, but what can they do with their minds, what can they do with their creativity. Those things are oftentimes left out of the narrative when we talk about Black boys.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because we've seen the sports world as a whole really bring social justice to the forefront this year, given everything that's happened. And you've been talking about social justice changes your entire career. What's it been like for you to see the NFL get behind this movement and have someone like Roger Goodell finally say Black Lives Matter?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, the awareness has been so high. It's at this point, the tokenism is really doesn't mean that much. But there is an opportunity for real change with this election that's coming up, and what the NFL, represents when it comes to just power. I think there's a lot that can still be done, specifically from NFL ownership. I think we as football players, but more importantly, NFL ownership and the NFL league, as a league, has the ability to influence those the policy that really affect day-to-day Americans.
The NFL's taken on a huge voting initiative this year, as you know. Do you think it's a genuine initiative by the league?
No, I think it's a very important initiative, especially with the election that's coming up and all that's at stake. I think it's important for us to get as many people registered as possible, and as many people engaged in our democracy and the decisions that we have to make as a society coming this November. So I have been very encouraged, to see teams commit their stadiums to be polling places, to volunteer, to service those polls. All of those things are important. And I definitely am encouraged by that effort.
And you've clearly positioned yourself for life after football. Are you considering getting into politics after your playing days? Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
No, I'm trying to avoid the political. But I think, I feel like my voice in this space is important, and will continue to do that in a way that I think is unique to me. One of the ways that I've found to be what I hope will be effective, and so far has been just owning my own narrative. And that's what made me start Listen Up Media, my own production company. Black Boys is our first project that we came on with, that's streaming now on Peacock, so please check it out. But to be able to create, storytell and create the content that people can really sit and digest. It's really hard to do these things on social media. It's really hard to do it, in a quick interview. But film is something that we all can, sit down, digest in the privacy of our own homes, and then have dialogue around. So I see that as a very effective way to storytell and to just open up the spectrum of what types of stories we tell and who tells them.
Don't go anywhere. When we come back, our Jory Epstein connects with Oklahoma head coach Lincoln Riley. It's time for more Weekly Pulse.
CD's already posted multiple 100-yard games as a pro. Kyler also got out to a fast start in the league. What's the key for you preparing your guys to understand the game well enough to immediately produce in the NFL?
Well, first and foremost, they're just two really good players. That's I think the obvious. They're guys that were physically ready to contribute and are for their position groups. They've got outstanding skill sets. And then I think here they'll use a couple things. I think when you're used to playing, in big game environments against really good competition, whether it's a lot of good competition here in their practices day to day because we have a lot of talented guys on this football team, and then you play in some of the biggest, best, most important games in college football year in and year out. So I don't think the moments of the competition, anything like that, would be a huge shock to their systems. Yeah, and then I think we've tried to we've done quite a few things offensively with both of those guys, so they've been exposed a lot. They've been asked to do a lot. Built some things out of around both of their skill sets, and I think they just really continue to grow here and become very complete players. And so that when they do get to that next level, there's not too many things different for them. So I would say probably a combination of all that.
For sure. Coach McCarthy was telling us after this week's game that there was one play where he said CD made a three-step drop where he said it's not the read you'd usually make on that coverage, and he was impressed that CD already knew to make the read for another coverage on that one. I mean, are those the kind of conversations you're having with your guys during the week, that let's not just do it right, but understand why we're doing it right?
Yeah, it's we've always wanted our guys to understand the entire concept as opposed to just their only job, and I think that's helped us. That's helped us, especially with the guy like Seed, and be able to move him around, to play different positions, to play in the slot, to play inside, to play outside, and to be able to do all those things maybe without a million reps like you might get if you only played one position. And to do that, you've got to have an overall understanding. And so, CD's a smart kid, football-wise, always was. Was always kind of locked into what the other people are doing, and that served him well here. And it sounds like it's helped him get off to a fast start in Dallas.
For sure. What do you think would most surprise a fan about CD that they don't know?
That's a great question. I mean, he's got an unbelievable personality. Really, really funny. But I think people probably see that. That's a great question. CD kind of is who he is. I think he loves football. He's got a passion for people. He's kind of always. In some ways, kind of like a little kid, and that he's just always having fun, joking around. But he has a great energy about him that you love being around. So, I think that comes across some in public too. I don't think that would be a big surprise. But yeah, just how much fun he is to be around, and he really is a great kid.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that little kid. I was telling someone, I'm like, I don't want to be describing receivers as adorable, but his personality is just so endearing. Yeah. And when we were talking to him about his first 100-yard game, and I was like, CD, Amari said in the huddle, he pointed up to the board and was like, look, you hit 100 yards. And CD just starts playing this picture for us, and he's like, oh yeah, and I read the board and it said CD 106, and I took the picture in my mind. And it was just the way he's describing it. You could just tell he's so happy to be here. It wasn't one of those cans like, oh yeah, I always want to get 100 yards.
Yeah, no, that's legitimately him. I mean, that's just kind of who he is. So no, he is. Yeah, endearing is a great word to describe it.
You bet. Okay, and actually one last question I lied. What would you tell Andy Dalton this week about what he should know to connect with CD from the start if you were Andy's coach?
Oh, I mean, Andy's a smart player. He's been around a long time, so he'll know plenty. But I mean, yeah, he knows he's got a lot of good playmakers, and that moment's not too big for that number 88. So, but Andy's a smart player, and knows the weapons he has. So I'm sure they'll keep on rolling. And obviously, crazy unfortunate what happened to Dak, but I know the Cowboys are fortunate to have such a great number 2 in Andy, and I would imagine they'll keep moving the football and keep doing a lot of great things.
That does it for this week's episode of Weekly Pulse. By this time next week, we will be deep in the MLB playoffs, and who knows what's in store for football. Until then, I'm Mackenzie Salmon. Thanks for watching. Hey sports fans, if you want to see more videos like this, check out some of our other ones right here. And if you like what you see, make sure to hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more from USA Today Sports.